Question number 8. Chantel is asking, how do you ensure the quality approved for the sample is done for the bulk order? Very good question. The quality standard for your bulk production should be agreed upon with your manufacturer in written form, as well as the quality control procedures and the AQL levels. So you need to write it out before you start your production. Before you start production of your fabrics, generally speaking. You start with, in the whole project of producing your fashion, say we have one style now, you start with the production of fabrics. So first we will look at fabrics and trims. So this is the first part. You produce fabrics, you produce trims. So you need to define quality standards for fabrics and trims. The applicable standards could be the composition, the color fastness, the fabric color and its deviation standard, and fabric weight. So these are common standards. Depending on the type of your product, you may also have other requirements to the fabric, like fabric being wrinkle-free, fire resistant, have a certain tear resistance, or have a certain seam slippage, to name the few. There are a lot of different requirements that you can have to your fabrics, depending on what product it is and what certifications for this product are required and what regulations are there in the market for this product. So some of them you can test by yourself, others can be tested by your manufacturer, and others have to be tested by a test lab. And all of them, of course, also can be tested by a test lab. So you always decide for yourself, do I want to test by myself? Do I want to just ask my manufacturer to test and provide the test results? Or do I want lab to run tests? So these will be the most official test results. Let's go through this example standards here and see how do you really test them. So composition. The composition, you can test it yourself by burning the fabric and you see what's inside. So this is the simplest one. You can run a lab test for a composition of the fabrics. If it is very important to know that this is the exact composition, then you can run a lab test. The color fastness. Color fastness can be tested by yourself. It's quite simple. You take cold water, you put your fabric into the cold water and see whether the water changes in color. If it changes in color, then the color fastness is below 3. And you can also check the color fastness by washing your garment together with a little white cloth. And then you see whether this white cloth changed the color. So then the color fastness will not be good. Again, it depends per product. For example, if we're talking about denim, color fastness of denim is probably 2, maybe 1.5, depending on what it is. So it is very low because denim, its quality is to lose its color and change its shade. So this is a denim property. But if we're talking about any other fabric for normal clothing, then you would expect the color fastness to be low as 4. And in this particular case, if you put it into the washing machine, wash it with a white piece of fabric, the white piece of fabric will remain white. Of course, you will need to wash it 30 degrees. You cannot put it at 100 degrees Celsius and then expect the white cloth to remain white. So you can test the color fastness by yourself. You also can test the color fastness by a lab. We are in different projects, we do both. Most of the time we test by ourselves. Sometimes we test by the lab. If it is extremely important, then we test it by the lab. So the next one would be the fabric color. And imagine you are coming to a factory and you are having certain color, so a color sample, and you say, I would love to have this very same color. And the factory will manufacture your fabrics in the very same color. So how do you make sure that the color is the same? The first one, you will be comparing them both. You'll say, oh, okay, looks the same. So the second one, you could run a lab test. So these are 2. and it's up to you which one you do. Again, these requirements should be stipulated before the production, not after that, because after production does not make any sense anymore. So now we are going another one which you want to test is fabric weight. So the fabric weight is being tested it's quite simple. You ask your factory to test it on a scale, and this is a fabric weight scale. If you want to test it yourself, you can purchase a fabric weight scale and test it yourself. It's very simple. Of course, you can make a lab test for that, but it's really way too expensive for a simple weight test that you can perform yourself, or your factory can do it. So if we are looking at other more specific requirements, like for example a fabric being wrinkle-free, the wrinkle-free quality of a fabric you can't test yourself. You simply turn the fabric until it does not turn anymore and see whether it's wrinkled or not. And 100% wrinkle-free fabric will not wrinkle. For example, if you are producing a fabric that has to be fire resistant, obviously you can test it by yourself as well, but a fire resistant requirement is already a very specific one, and garments made, the fire resistant garments, they are made for a certain purpose. It means that in this particular case you will need to have a lab test confirming black and white that the fabric is fire resistant and what level of fire resistance it has. If you want to have a tear resistance, again, you will need to run a lab test. The tear resistance by yourself does not make any sense. Normally, when someone comes and says, I need this fabric to be tear resistant to a certain level, then we are talking about specialty items. Say, for example, if belts for the cars are manufactured, they have to have a certain tear resistancy, and it has to be tested by a lab. If you are producing a belt for a man and you want to have a high quality product, not the fashion item that is sold for 2 cents and do not last 2 weeks, that are common now in the markets, if you want to have a very good quality leather belt, you will have a tear test as well, and you would love to have it tested by a lab, to have it on paper and to use it for your marketing materials. So the belt in this case would be a commercial product, a normal market product, right? A fashion product. But a belt for a car is a special product. It has to do with the security of the driver and the passengers in the car. So you cannot really joke with it. But in both cases, I would recommend a lab test. So now we've spoken about how do you control quality of your fabrics. The same thing you can do for your trims. You can test them on color fastness. You could test them on the composition, on everything. It is not always required. Sometimes it's important, other times it's not that important. You decide yourself which one is important to you, and of course you are looking at the regulations for your garment type in the market where you sell, and then you act and you perform tests according to those regulations, if any. For fashion, it's quite not much is regulated. There are several things that are important. If you are in a children market, then there are several regulations in the test that you need to run. But if you are in adult market for clothing for adults, then there are not that many regulations. So now you have confirmed that your fabrics are all good. You've tested them. Everything is perfect. And after that, you are going into bulk. So what do you do in the bulk production? How do you make sure that your garment comes out exactly the same as the sample that you have approved in the production? How can you make sure that the craft is upon your requirements? So again, you submit written specifications to your manufacturer on things like sizing and size deviation acceptance. So you will need to confirm size tables. You specify the packaging. How exactly do you want the packaging to be? You specified what type of labeling goes on the packaging. It's all up to you. You specify the stitches, like what type of stitches do you want? What are the stitch sizing? that you want, how many stitches per inch for all those different stitches. So if it's not important to you, then you do not specify it, and it will be done in a way that the manufacturer sees fit. But if it is important to you, that then you specify it. So anything that you will look at to determine the quality of the product has to be specified up front. Your manufacturer will reply whether they can meet these standards or not, and often it is related to the price of the product. So sometimes they will say, well, we can do that, but it will cost you. And most of the times, if there is something that cannot be done, manufacturers will say that they will not do it. Or also, sometimes they just simply cannot do it. It is possible that you are going to a manufacturer and this manufacturer does not have a certain machine that you are requiring. So they will tell you that they do not have the machine, that they want to exchange it. So this is a dialogue. At the end of the day, the manufacturer and you have all these requirements in written. And this is when the pre-production sample is being made. The pre-production sample is this sample, how your good will look in production. You receive the pre-production sample. You can submit your changes at a certain point in time. When you say this sample is approved, against this sample the quality control will be executed. Your production will be compared to this pre-production sample and for the deviations. So this will be your pre-production sample is a quality standard. Your manufacturer has to have a pre-production sample too. So normally 2 samples are executed for a client. 1 goes to the client and another stays with the manufacturer. Large fashion companies operate with AQL levels. AQL level means the acceptable quality level. AQL level is a measure applied to products, and it is defined in ISO 2859-1 as the quality level that is the worst tolerable. So that's important to know. The AQL tells you how many defective components are considered acceptable during random sampling quality inspections. So at the end of the bulk, when the bulk is finished and the quality control organization goes to control the quality, they control this quality based on a certain AQL level, the acceptable quality level that that the large clothing companies predefine upfront. For general consumer products, AQL level, by the way, the AQL tables are freely available online, so you can Google AQL levels and you will get the table which will show you what different types of AQL levels are available and how do you do the quality control based on what AQL do you choose. So for general consumer products, AQL level is usually set at 2.5. What does it mean? It means a 0 tolerance for critical defects, 2.5 for major defects, and 4 for minor defects. What does it mean? It means that no critical defects are allowed, 2.5% major defects are allowed, and 4% minor defects are allowed. The price of goods is calculated based on client's AQL requirements. The higher AQL requirement, the higher the price of goods. The list of your AQL defect classification has to be known to the manufacturer upfront. They need to know against which points are you going to check the quality. You need to define your minor defects, your major defects, and your critical defects up front. So what does it mean? Your minor defect is a defect that does not interfere with sales of the product. So you still can sell the product and the client will not return this product. This is considered a minor defect. A major defect is considered a defect that will lead to a return, a defect that makes a product unsellable. For example, if you have a dress shirt and this dress shirt for a man does not have any buttons on it, you cannot sell it. It will be returned by a client. I have not seen a client in ages who would say, oh, do not worry, I'm going to buy some buttons and sew them on myself. And critical defects are defects that can cause injury or even death to the client. For example, if you are using a fabric that is causing severe allergies to the people who are wearing it. So this would be considered a critical defect. So all these defects have to be defined upfront, and then the quality assurance organization is going to check your bulk that is finished